Now, so now I'm going to try and explain the ramifications of this. So in this timeline, Zelda goes back in time. Now there's still the Zelda from this timeline, so now we have a sealed Zelda, which never wakes up. Well, we don't actually know what happens to her because it never really explores this, but Zelda's imprisoned, and the Zelda of this timeline disappears. She's no longer exists after the game's over. Demise is still alive in this timeline, and he's sealed, but he's still alive, and Girahim's still alive, and I guess Link's still alive. So everyone's still alive in this timeline. The dragon is dead, and the Triforce is not formed. In this timeline, the dragon's dead, the Triforce is not formed, Girahim is alive, Demise is alive, and Zelda's imprisoned in the past, and in the future she doesn't exist anymore, so the only Zelda in this timeline is the one that's sealed during this area of time. She's sealed in that. So, in this timeline, the dragon's dead, but the tree exists. Girahim and Demise are still alive. And the Triforce has not been formed. In this sub-timeline, Demise, the monster, is killed at this point. So Demise is dead. In this timeline, the tree still exists. And the dragon is alive. Demise is dead. And Girahim doesn't exist anymore because he went back in time. Now, he was destroyed in this timeline, but that was the one from this area. So this is kind of getting confusing. In this timeline, Demise is killed as his human form back here, so he no longer exists throughout this whole area. He doesn't exist. The tree doesn't exist because he never went back in time. And the dragon's dead because the tree never exists. You never go back in time. You never do your journey. So the tree is not there and the dragon's dead. Demise is dead. But Girahim's still alive in this timeline. He's still in this area. He's still alive because you never went and defeated him. It's possible that later on he does something that makes you want to go and do some quest, but that's never explained. We have no proof of that, so I have to assume that he's still alive. Now, at the end of the game, when you go back into the future, you again don't go into this future. When you beat Demise, you and Zelda go back into this future, where the Triforce has been formed. You formed the full Triforce, and assuming at that point they put this Triforce away. It is said that they're not allowed to have the Triforce because humans can't be trusted with it. They shouldn't be relying on it to do everything for them. So I'm assuming that's when they put it in the sacred realm. Now here's another problem I have. At the end, and this is relating into the whole story of the rest of the plots of Zelda, and not just Skyward Sword. At the end of the game, you put your sword into the ground, and Fi basically shuts off. So it explains why Fi's never in the rest of the games, which is good. But when you place your sword, you place it in the sealed temple, not in the Temple of Time. Now, the Temple of Time was destroyed, but I'm assuming that eventually it is rebuilt. But the fact that it's now the Master Sword is lying at the inside the sealed temple and not inside the Temple of Time, where it would be received by Link in Ocarina of Time, is a problem to me. So somewhere in between here and Ocarina of Time, the sword's moved. I don't know if Nintendo is going to try and make another game just to place that, or if it was a mistake, or what. The sealed temple kind of looks like the Temple of Time, so they might try and, you could argue that the sealed temple is the new Temple of Time, and the Temple of Time from Skyward Sword was destroyed and never rebuilt. I'm not sure how you want to argue that, but I didn't really like that. So the whole plot's kind of confusing. I don't really like how this happened, and this timeline basically causes a paradox, because you should, when you go forward in time, you should go here, but that would cause a problem because Demise is already dead, and then you would have no purpose of going back in the first place to defeat him, so it doesn't really make any sense. I also don't like the fact that this timeline's even needed, this alternate timeline where Zelda comes back so that there's a sealed person in here. Technically, at the beginning of the game, Zelda shouldn't be sealed in this. There should be no Zelda in this area of time. And I guess Impa shouldn't exist either. Well, I guess Impa could still exist because Impa existed back here, so Impa could still exist. But Zelda shouldn't be there, and Impa shouldn't have the bracelet anyway when you start the game. Because it's just, it doesn't make any sense. Where would she get the bracelet? Now, you could argue that they were thinking of time differently, and that this all happens on one stretch of time, and when everyone goes back, it physically alters the new timeline, and they're all just reliving this. But I don't like that idea, because that's not how I think of time. To me, this is time. Branch theory. You know, it's not, you can't just go back in time and relive this, because it would go differently. If something's changed in the past, it can't go the same. That's not how time works. So, kind of disappointed in the fact that it went like that. Overall, it was an okay game. I like this plot until that very end part. If Girahim had never taken Zelda back in time and made this plot, this timeline, it would have been fine. And the game would have made 100% sense. They could have found some other way to get Demise back. The only other way I can actually think about how it would work is that somehow, even though Demise is destroyed here, he gets recreated somehow so that he's still in the ground in here, and then that would make you go back in time and do all these events, so that when you go forward in time you end up here. But then you don't really have any good evidence for why Demise is back in the ground during this time, so it doesn't really make any sense. Unless you could argue that, like, maybe Girahim went into another alternate dimension, but then that's a lame plot excuse, and I don't like that. But so this is my best description of what happened in this game. I know it's kind of confusing. If you guys have any other ideas of how to explain everything that happened in this game and make it make sense, go ahead and post a video response or leave a comment in below. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Alright, thanks a lot. Thanks for watching. Thumbs up and favorite if you liked the video.